All right, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to start with our introduction and then get rolling. What happens now regarding your journey with managing and expressing your sexuality? Oh, that is our wrong one.
Okay.
One
You
moment.
just bluff it.
Take
I've been bluffing it for years. You don't have to actually read it. You just
Paul's
bluff.
having fun. He's
I'll
smiling.
take that one. Let's read that other one. That was interesting.
You said sex, so I'm interested now.
That's right.
I've
Sounded
been
really
reading
interesting.
that one for both of you. Just go
Have you?
married well. You just switched the title.
Oh my goodness. All right.
This is going to be fun, folks. We're concrete today.
Our time together.
We'll get you another one next time.
Okay. Our time together is not meant to replace the essential connection you need to cultivate within your community. Everyone needs a place where they can be themselves, be fully honest in order to receive feedback and support. You need a support group, and this isn't it. We are here to enrich your relationships by offering insights about God and life that may inspire you to break free from ambivalence, encourage you to pursue new personal challenges, and enhance your interactions with those around you while aligning with God's intentions for your life. This is more than just an informational podcast, for knowledge not grounded in human experience won't lead to change. Our podcast is designed to be interactive, as true change requires us to acknowledge our need for growth, develop new habits, and take the risk of sharing our unique journey. During this time, you will hear from us and other alternative solutions for you to consider, but it is up to you to decide what is helpful and consistent with God's will for you. The nature of your interactions does not allow for a true therapeutic encounter. So what you've received needs to be viewed like the Bereans. Let's seek God together as we pray this prayer. Psalms 139, 23 to 24. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you, and lead me along the path of everlasting life. It's great to see everyone this evening and be able to have yet another great conversation. My name is Micah Freeman. I am the Director of Ministry at Servants Oasis, where we seek to provide pastoral care for the very burnt down community that pastors are. I'm also an outpatient therapist with Pennsylvania Counseling Services. From there, I'll turn it over to Dean. We'll go to Melissa and then finish it up with Roy.
I'm Dean Brior. I work with a marriage ministry called the Marriage Hub, and we serve couples that are in crisis, troubled, or stuck in unhealthy relationships. And we are headquartered in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, serving across the nation in various sites. Love my wife, Nancy, 48 years in June, we'll celebrate. So got a lot of stories in those 48 years. So looking forward to being here tonight with everybody.
Awesome. My name is Melissa Haas. I am a licensed professional counselor, and I love to work with marriages. I'm married to Troy, and we have 3 adult children. We live in down south and near Atlanta, Georgia. So I'm excited to be here in this wonderful brotherhood and add to the conversation.
My name is Roy Smith. I'm an ordained minister with the Evangelical Church Alliance. I'm also a licensed psychologist and certified addictions counselor. And it's just great to be with you today talking about being married well and some of the areas that relationships are challenging. Some days they're the most rewarding thing you can be a part of. And then at another time, you're not sure if you're going to survive that relationship or not. And it can kind of come and go. And we're here talking about the process of relationships so that instead of relationships, the results of a relationship being what we might sometimes feel they are, chance and luck, okay, they actually can be more intentionally created between us and someone we love, following through on the right set of love skills so that intimacy can occur. I remember many moons ago, I was at I have a condo in right outside of in Claremont, Florida, about 35 minutes from Disney World. And I was there for the week. Okay. And while I was, we therapists, for fun, we observe people. Okay. And then we pretend that we think we know what they're doing and going on. So we create little stories that go with our observations. All right. And the neat thing about being a therapist is if you do this and you don't tell anybody what's going on in your mind, you can always assume that you're right because there's nobody there to contradict you as long as you stay quiet. All right. So I was observing this couple and their endurance and the way they worked together was exemplary. They had a 3 or 4 year old child, and then they had a 6 or 7 year old child. Okay, and I watched them for 6 days straight, and what I observed is that they would be in the adult pool, then they would be in the children's pool, and then sometimes they go opposite directions. And I watched this couple chase them all over all over the park, so to speak, and take their turn. And at the end of the week, it was literally the 6th day. I happened to be swimming in the pool in the deep end, and the wife was there. And I said to her, I've watched you guys all week, and how you have fastidiously stuck with being a parent against very challenging odds just blew my mind. You could tell you love each other, you could work together, and those kids had boundless energy. In fact, in watching it, I'd have quit a long time ago. In the scenario, I'd have been done by day 2. And she looked at me and said, "Yeah, we do love each other." And then she said this sentence. She said, we had 1 hour together before we got married. We saw each other for 1 hour before we got married." And I said, "I'm a therapist." And she said, "I have a master's degree in therapy." And I said, "So can I ask you some invasive questions? Because this is interesting to me."
Yeah.
And she said, "Yeah, let her rip." And I said, "So you knew this man that you obviously have worked well with for 1 hour prior to getting married?" And she said, "Yes, my cousin was the chaperone. We are from India, and it was an arranged relationship." And I looked at her and I said, "Well, you guys really love each other. All right. I mean, I've watched it in action. Can you explain to me just a little bit about how that came down?" And she smiled and she said, "Well," she said, "you know, you guys, we do it a little differently than you do here in the States." Okay. And she said, "I was fortunate with the man that I married. He's a good man and very accomplished himself." And she said, "Love is a skill. And if you practice the skills, love comes. And if you start out feeling in love and you don't practice the skills, then you don't have love. Eventually, however the bang started, it doesn't stay." And she said, "We love each other because we practice the skills of love." And I actually, in my walk with God, felt I felt He appointed that woman to be in my life at that particular point. And when I wrote the men's program, Knights of the 21st Century, it's in churches all over the place, I shared that story, and I thought, what are the love skills? What are the love skills? And so I felt God gave me at least some of the love skills that need practice. And because I can't remember things, He gave me a way to list them out. So it spells large care, Large, C-A-R-E. And each one of those words is a particular skill that if we do it, it goes okay. So maybe sometime I'll share with you what they are. But let's see if anybody wants to add, or Melissa, or Paul, or anybody else, whether you guys believe if you do the skills you have love, and if you don't do the skills, whatever you started with, it's gonna disappear.
Um, Hi, Dr. Roy. I sort of jump in. Last year I had two close friends, and they're both Indian, and they went back to India and had more or less arranged marriages, and then their wives have now come back with them to New Zealand. And I've spent time with both of them because they're good friends, and I'm just blown away with how happy they seem from people that they barely knew. You know, they had maybe in one situation there was about a few days before the actual event, not just 1 hour, but the few days to get to know the person, and the other it was again a short time periods, but to me, I see it in real life. People actually working out love skills, as a young couple, and it's really lovely to see.
It's sure not the way sometimes Hollywood portrays it has to start, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just thinking about that when we were missionaries in Kenya. All of the tribes had arranged marriages. There was not such a thing as a love relationship. And even biblically, in Hebrew, in the Hebrew Jewish culture, they were arranged marriages. I think that part of why we struggle so much in our marriages is because if you have an arranged marriage, you actually have to work at it. And if you don't, then you trust the feelings that you have rather than communication, working through problems. You go with the feeling, and if the feeling dissipates, then oh no, we've fallen out of love and we end the relationship. So I wholeheartedly concur, that the love skills are necessary.
I like the idea of the intentionality of developing marriage skills, not just marriage ideas or marriage thoughts, but actually we become skilled at our jobs, we become skilled at our hobbies, we become skilled. Roy is an incredibly skilled writer because he does it all the time, and whether we want to or not, we're doing marriage all the time. If we get married, we're married all the time. And I love the attitude of saying, we need to become skilled. I mean, at our intensives, so many couples have no clue what that means, what it means to intentionally learn each other, intentionally find common ground, ignore the non-common ground unless it violates biblical principles, meaning Nancy ignores some of my maleness that is annoying to her. And she embraces where she and I can interact together. She doesn't attack me about some of my maleness. She just says, that's what guys are and do, and so there's that grace that allows me to expand and become really good at the places that we're interacting in. But yeah, I like that concept. I want to be a skilled married person.
It is interesting to think about because I don't know if I've thought of love as a skill, and it in thinking that I'm like wondering how like love is similar to a sort of game or dance, and that just like a game or dance, it takes practice to get better with it. And so I'd be curious to hear how might one practice the skills of love? How might one improve the skills of love that come through time?
Well, Roy, in your book, you talked about the dance. So, and did you say you were a great dancer with your wife, or you weren't great?
No, I'm horrendous. Uh, because I think to be good in anything in life, it begins with the attitude. And when you have a poor attitude about dancing, everything kind of goes with it after that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And sometimes I guess, if Jan wants to dance and she doesn't, thank God, most of the time. We have to face those attitudinal, make an attitudinal adjustment and be kind of come open to a part of the world that is not necessarily natural for us. I grew up in a legalistic home that I think they cut out of the scriptures where David danced. Okay. So
Yeah,
wherever
yeah.
that was, if that verse out, burn it. Okay. At that moment, there was not inspired. You can't be have dance and inspiration at the same time. So I kind of bought into that, and I look back on it, and I think I lost some important parts of life as a result of that, and I wish I could have been a little more open.
I love this conversation about love skills, because I think when I think about the script we have in our heads about what love is, it's really more and more defined by media, right? So what and I say all the time, porn and Disney have done more to wreck marriages than any other thing on the planet, because they both have these unrealistic expectations. In the Disney movies, the prince rides up, he's automatically in love with the princess. They don't know each other, but somehow they're in happy bliss, right? And then pornography, of course, portrays this this illusion of connection, but it's all sexual and it's about intensity, not love. And so, I think about we as a culture, our expectations of what love is based on these social scripts and narratives that we don't even realize are in our heads. I know that's true for me. It was true for me. What do you guys think about if you were to define what love really is, like marital love? What is love?
Nancy's dad told her, honey, I know you love Dean now, but love is a commitment. Love is not a feeling. So when your feelings fade, remember you committed to this man for life. And he said it in the way only a dad can say it, which is, uh, and then he said right after, he says, and don't think you can come home if things get too rough. And he said it in love, but he said, you've chosen this journey. You believe God's put you on this journey. Stay committed, stay steadfast to the things you're going to say. And I remember 5 years into our marriage, Nancy said, this is terrible. This marriage is terrible. The ministry's become your mistress. So you've been cheating on me for 6 years and I'm done. Do we get divorced? I said, no, we can't get divorced. We told God we wouldn't. So we're either going to have a terrible marriage or we're going to figure out how to have a good marriage, but divorce isn't an option. And I think that's what got us through that hard time, to start learning about each other. And that's when we met Gary Smalley's book. We had our pastor teach us. We really wanted to become good at being married. But there was so much we had to learn that nobody ever taught us. And the main thing we had to learn is that we were committed to each other, even in the midst of this hard part of our marriage. We weren't going anywhere, and we were committed to making it better. And I think that's when the commitment to learning the skills happened. But commitment was the part of love that's kept us together.
Yeah. Anchored you.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going anywhere. We will be with each other and for each other.
Yes, I remember telling Nancy for like 4 or 5 months after that, I'd get up every morning and I'd tell her before I went off to work, I said, I love you. You're my mission and I'm not going anywhere. And every morning she'd say, I don't believe that. About a month in, she says, I think you believe that. And then about 3 months in, she says, I think you might actually mean it, but it won't last. It won't last. So 6 months in, I remember her very clearly, her saying, you have proven to me that you love me and I love you and let's do this thing. But that was 6 months of I love you, you're my mission, and I'm not going anywhere. Commitment, and I had guys that were supporting me and, saying, hang in there. I said, it's been 3 months. But, the big thing is I wasn't doing it for Nancy. I was doing it for the Lord. Not that I'm so spiritual. I was doing it. My commitment was to do it for God, whether Nancy stayed or not, whether she decided to forgive me or not. Because if I had said I'm going to do it so that Nancy forgives me, what if she never did? Because that was a transactional thing. I wanted to be transformed by God. I wanted to give up my workaholism and find my security in Him, not what I do plus other people's approval. So I was going through my own transformation personally as God was transforming our marriage.
Melissa, I love your question. Because I thought about it and there was an immediate answer that popped in my head, but I was like, wait a second. Because I feel like how we define love really does say a lot about us and a lot about our relationships too. And I don't know if the original immediate thought that I had about love was really as all inclusive as the way that Dean subscribed it or described it, that it was a commitment, that it was seen in action. And so I really like that question. I'd be curious to hear other people's thoughts on it too, because I really like that question.
Well, what was your thought? What was your first thought?
Well,
we're open here. We don't have to be right. What's your first thought?
I think my first thought just was love is a feeling.
Oh, okay.
But then I thought about that and I was like, wait a second, but it is much deeper than that. Or at least it should be.
That's interesting. Paul, what do you think? Do you have what time is it in New Zealand?
Here now it's just before 12 o'clock, midday lunchtime.
Okay. All right. So, do you have any input on your definition of love or what we're talking about here?
Yeah, as you're talking, relating perhaps what Dean was saying, I was thinking of whether I've heard it in 12-step recovery that I'm in, or whether I've heard it from C.S. Lewis or something along the lines that if you want to change your feelings towards someone to be more loving, and I think that can be, roommates, workmates, friends, brothers, people at church, anyone, you try to take actions of love or actions of kindness, and your feelings change, your feelings follow on. And often found that does seem to be a reality for me if I'm struggling with my feelings for someone, think, hey, I'm feeling a bit critical towards them or a bit harsh towards them, and I don't like that feeling. But if I can actually be deliberate about doing something kind towards the person, often my feelings follow, and I start to like the person, And so I'm not married, and I suppose that's why I'm applying it to a more general relationship. Sure. But I think there's that principle, and maybe that's part of that skill thing, is that I don't actually have to depend upon my feelings, but I can choose actions, and my feelings will change, probably usually for the better. And I think recovery literature sort of supports that approach too sometimes.
There's a concept in psychology called cognitive dissonance, okay? And we don't like to live in duplicity, going two opposite contradictory ways at the same time. And so you're right. I like what you said, Paul, because if you choose to do a different kind of action towards somebody, okay, the tendency is for the rest of your psyche to align with that, because that creates less tension than trying to do two different things at the same time. We don't like to live in contradiction. And that's even why some of the going to church, some of the spiritual disciplines, okay, tend to kind of help us align ourselves with Christ a little more, because we put some action along with our commitment to Christ. We put some action with it, which then changes our thoughts, and our feelings tend to more align.
think along the lines of committed and love being a commitment, I feel like the word unconditional comes to mind as well. That it's not a situational thing. It's not a here and then not here, at least in the form of romantic love. Maybe for the love of food, it might be conditional, but I think relationally, unconditional, an unconditional nature is really, really important. It's not an I love you because of this. It's an I love you because that is who you are. I love you. I I think it's interesting to think in, and maybe I would tend to think this is a biblical uh part of love, but the idea I love you despite yourself. Like I love you despite your falling short. I love you despite your hurting me in this moment. I love you because you are you.
So what would the love skills be? I will tell you the ones I made up, okay, or I asked God about. So I've got large care, so that's nine. Is that nine? LARGECARE. I think it's eight
Yeah.
or nine, something like that.
Right.
So we got nine love skills that I said. So let's come up with the love skills that you go, this should be a skill. And because maybe we'll have to add more to this large care. We'll have to come up with eight acronyms in a row to get all the skills out there. So we don't miss any honorable mentions here. So what are some of the skills that you think by practicing those actions, as Paul said, the heart is more likely to follow?
I love Cubby's statement. That's a perfect marriage statement where he says, seek first to understand, then seek to be understood. So a skill, a listening skill for married people is to listen to your spouse's heart, listen to their head, listen to them, and be present in the listening, and then express yourself as well. But that's the hard part, being present when you're listening and listening to their heart. Because I'm a fixer. Nancy shares a problem, and halfway through, I'm already fixing it in my brain. I've got 9 steps and some glue to help her. And I miss that precious moment where she's sharing her heart. So I think a good listening skill is listen with your heart and listen to understand, not to fix somebody.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I always say listen with relentless curiosity.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
No agenda. I just want to know you. I want to know your heart. I want to know what you're feeling. I want to know what you're scared of. Relentless curiosity, um, with no agenda. And that is the kind of listening that communicates or sends the message that I am with you and for you. I'm here with you. It's very grounding in your soul when someone really listens.
And curiosity requires humility because
You,
you're asking them about themselves and it's not about you. Nancy was in jury duty today. On the way home, she didn't stop talking because I just kept asking questions. And it was most delightful conversation just to hear her talk about this and that and certain things she couldn't tell me. But I really enjoyed drawing her out, the joy of drawing her out and having her share her heart there.
Well, I like the relentless curiosity because I was going to ask us. Let's stop here on this skill for a second, and what stops us from listening with relentless curiosity? What makes that hard? And I like the word curious because it's it takes away the pre-planned I'm right and I already know you. Okay. And so many times we're just, instead of listening, we're just waiting for some space so we can tell the person what we pre-planned think. If you add the word curious, it completely screws up that way that it points out what listening should be at a basic level versus often sadly what we make listening be.
Now, to that point, when I'm working with couples, what what most often gets in the way of listening is I have made a judgment about your motive or what you did or why you did it, and I believe everything I think. And so at that moment, there isn't any space in the relationship to hold a different idea or opinion. I can't, there's no space. And so I watch this happen with couples, and it happens like nanoseconds, right? He says something and she says, I knew you didn't love me. Just like that. The judgment is quick, it is definite, and she believes it with all of her heart. And so if there's no space for curiosity for your person, then you will believe whatever you think, and those beliefs will become a wall between you and your spouse. And like you said, Dean, without the humility of being correctable or the curiosity of, well, maybe it isn't exactly what I think. Maybe I could just hold space here. Then we never can have intimacy or love. We don't feel love.
When I'm asked to be a therapist to parents who bring me in a child that you think they would be claiming was demon possessed. Okay, this child cannot win. Okay, and they bring the teenager or the 8-year old in, and then they list out a litany of sins or no goodness or bad things this child has done. And you can almost see the child either wither in front of this machine gun barrage, or the eyes flash, and the answer is, I am going to get you.
Yes.
Okay.
Fight or flight.
And oftentimes, the way the teenager or child gets you is through a self-destructive act. Okay. Because if you love them and they hurt themselves, they can hurt you. And when you watch this, and I'm looking at it, you haven't given that child any chance to redefine themselves or to explain the causal nature of why they made the choices that they made. And you've almost, by putting them in this confining box, said that is going to be the box they live in the rest of their life. And then when they're done doing this 45 minutes of psychic castration, okay, they then look at me and say, you fix this. Okay. And all I saw them do was reinforce the negative self-definition that would then justify why shouldn't I be what you claimed I am? And a lot of people listening to this would kind of see that, okay, in that parent-child interaction, but it is the same phenomenon when we say to our mate, this is who you are, and we start to go like that, because it's only a matter of time before that person gives up and says, I'm going to live down to the low expectations you have for me. You'll hear sentences like, I can't win with him or her.
Mm.
And and so therefore the person complaining actually reinforces the problem that that they want to be fixed. They are one of the primary reasons why they're unhappy, but they don't know they're the one helping create this negative dance.
And it's in somewhat connection to this. I hear a lot about the idea of like happy wife, happy life, or like happy spouse. Like if you can please your spouse, that things will be better. And I was actually having a conversation earlier this week with a client, trying to figure out how love is more than that. That love isn't just pleasing or appeasing the other person. And I can't figure out like a fancy word for it, which is why I'm going to turn towards Dean or Melissa, because I feel like they've got the fancy words for everything. But how does that play into a skill in love, or a relational skill?
Pleasing is about fear. It's not about love.
Hmm.
And that's why it doesn't work.
I like that.
I please when I'm afraid. And it's usually something we bring with us from our childhood. A pattern of relating to someone that we feel tied to or we need in our life. And so because it's motivated by fear, it can't produce intimacy.
There's the fancy word.
You may be nice, but you're not intimate. You may be kind and very pleasing, but you'll never let that person into your heart, in your soul. And
they don't know you.
Yeah.
And you don't really know them.
Then maybe the skill in that is authenticity, genuineness.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And learning how to be authentic with each other and still be safe with each other. When I share my fears with Nancy, when I did it when we were young, we weren't trained on how to handle it. So we kind of just said, I don't know what to do with that. And as we grew and matured, we found it incredibly therapeutic to share our fears and our scare. Like I'd have a bad day at work, and maybe I was in surgery and it went wrong, and now I'm afraid I'm going to lose that doctor, which means I won't make my quota, which means I'll get fired, which means we'll be homeless because I can spin down really, yeah. And so when I was able to share that with Nancy, it was incredibly therapeutic. And I found out she's a very strong woman. It didn't scare her. She stopped it after I shared the whole thing. And she said, that's not going to happen. God's with you. You're a hardworking man. That's not going to happen. But I never would have gotten that blessing from her had I not taken the risk to be authentic. How was your day? Fine. Which many men do because they're afraid of getting caught as unable. So yeah, authentic's a great skill. I like that.
Mm-hmm. As a recovering pleaser, Micah, myself, I grew up in a home with a dad who, said jump, we said how high, right? That it was a very father-centric home, and it was based on making sure dad wasn't unhappy, because unhappy meant anger, and anger meant we were going to get hurt. And so, when I stepped into my marriage, I married a man who had a lot of trauma, and his automatic response to anything that distressed him was anger. So if he was scared, it looked like anger. If he was sad, it looked like anger. Anger was the only emotion he felt comfortable with. And so it perpetuated that pattern I brought with me into my marriage of what can I do so that he will be calm? Can I make him his favorite meal? Can I say, can I say it just the right way so I don't trigger something in him? Can I? So it really, my life became organized around pleasing. So that's all rooted in fear. So guess who he didn't know? He didn't know me. I never told him, hey, I really felt bad today. I was too busy worried about how my emotions would trigger his emotions. So what happens for those of us who struggle with pleasing is that we feel very alone in our marriages. Sometimes we feel very resentful because we're doing a lot, but we're not getting any needs met because we're not talking about what we need. And often it is the pleasers in relationship who end up leaning out of the marriage to get their needs met elsewhere. Someone notices them or sees them, and that is very, very vulnerable, right? Oh, you see me. That's like crack cocaine to someone who has just been pleasing and doesn't have their needs met. It's pleasers who tend to be avoidant and look at pornography, because in pornography, I can create the whole scenario in my mind where this person sees me and wants me, and I'm all that, right? And I don't have to serve her. Whereas I feel compelled to serve my wife. So recovering from pleasing is a really big goal. God has taken me on a huge journey in that, because there can't be fear if we're going to truly love. And if I'm operating out of that fear in me, I will not be able to love well.
Melissa, you don't have to answer this, but if you would, it would be interesting and maybe helpful.
Sure.
How do you stop pleasing? I mean, what are the steps of giving up pleasing?
Of giving up pleasing?
Because when we have these coping mechanisms, they're so automatic. Okay. You could please like 17 times and
you catch
go,
it
I might be pleasing.
Yes, I might be pleasing. So I worked really hard with my therapist on learning. First of all, I had to learn how I was feeling. So the very first step was self-awareness. I can remember my first homework assignment. She wanted me to keep this thing called an anger log. And I was like, what are you talking about? I never get angry. He's the angry one. And she was like, okay, can you just keep a frustration log then? I was like, well, I might get frustrated occasionally. So bless her, I look back and think, oh my goodness, I was a horrible client. But I didn't know my feelings. So the first step you can't be authentic until you know you, right? So I had to learn what was going on in me, be able to do body scans, locate that feeling. Oh, that's pressure on my chest. That must be anxiety. I feel anxious about. And then I started telling Troy. So he would do something and I would say, I feel really unseen right now. Or I feel used. And I'm feeling kind of resentful that you expect me to do this for you, but you haven't asked me once. What would I like? So those were scary moments. Like Jesus and I had to be like, okay, Lord, you will catch me softly. You will catch me softly if my husband cannot. But, I told Troy for a long, long time, I struggled. I could manage, like if he got angry, I could stay present and manage, but my heart would pound. I would literally have to tell myself, feet to the floor, Melissa, stay grounded. You are fine. Right. But we were walking the other day and he lost his temper about something. And I didn't register it in my body. I was like, and I noticed it for the first time. I was like, wow, he's angry. I'm fine. I feel nothing. This is amazing. And I started laughing. He's like, what's so funny? He got angrier because he thought I was laughing at him. I was like, no. Here's the thing. You just got angry about me forgetting that. And he's like, yeah. I was like, I didn't feel anything. He's like, what does that mean? I was like, usually my heart pounds because I'm afraid that it's just instinctive. Like it happens. Like I'm afraid. But this time Nothing happened. I thought to myself, oh, wow, makes sense why he's angry. That was frustrating. I forgot to do that. That's miraculous. So he just looked at me like, and I was like, you don't understand. This is huge.
Oh,
But
that is so huge. It's fantastic because that means you can be fully present to him in a way that previously you weren't.
that is correct.
Because and one of the terms in psychology, so a certain branch of psychology is being a container for someone else's something.
Mhm.
And basically, you were like a vacuum cleaner with there was a vacuum in your containerness, and it would and it was out there, and you did not turn it on and bring it in.
That is correct.
Okay. And to me, what that's implying is the ultimate trust, not only in yourself, but in the other. Okay. Because you're saying, I see you as strong. I don't have to be the container. I trust you to be able to go on that journey with whatever you're containing and come up with a solution that does not cause me to have to become distorted to fit in to the picture.
Yeah, and another way to think about that is I was always taking responsibility for Troy's distress.
Hmm.
If he was upset or afraid, or mad, it was my job to fix it, as if I were God, right? It's a really overblown role. So, so I think you're right, Roy, for me, sucking all of that negative energy into myself and being the emotional barometer thermostat for him, like, I have to regulate you. I have to regulate you, was exhausting. And it showed distrust. I don't trust you. You can't handle yourself. I have to handle you, which enables him not to grow up, not to manage his emotions, not regulate himself. So, um, so
And
first thing,
sometimes we have to look at the other person and say, it's going to be very interesting how you handle that. It's not mine to handle,
that's right. That's
but
right.
I'm with you and I'm paying attention, and
Yes,
it's going to be really interesting how you handle that.
Because you're handing it back to them, not an accusatory with the
right.
you're handing it back to them and saying, let's see what you can do with that.
It's when curiosity really helps. So, oh, wow, that's really frustrating. What are you thinking you'll do to solve that problem?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is
Uh,
making me think of like one of the main key points in the first chapter of your becoming one book, that you can't control your spouse, but you can change how you respond to them. I
mhm.
feel like that's what we're figuring out in this, is
Yeah.
that though the responses of our significant others or those that we're in relationships is outside of our control, that we do have control over ourselves, and recognizing that we actually allow ourselves to change the things that we feel like we can't.
Yes.
I'm curious though, to continue in this conversation. As a recap, we've got listening, we've got authenticity. What are some other love skills? Other skills involved in healthy love?
Well, I love Gary Chapman's book. He's here in Winston-Salem, so we get to connect with him every once in a while. Um, and I just love what he does, that skill of loving somebody in their language, understanding what it is that makes them feel loved, and they're becoming an expert in doing that with them. And now he's expanded it. Now he has love language quizzes for how do you argue in your love language? How do you apologize in your love language? And it's really, you really can become an expert in understanding your wife's and husband's love language. And that is a skill. I'm telling you, Nancy and I have been doing it for 48 years. We're still learning. Um, Mine is words of affirmation. Hers is time and service. So it's easy to love her because there's lots of stuff to do, and she feels loved when I give her things and do things. But she doesn't. She words are not natural to her. Words don't come out of her. Words of appreciation. So as we've learned that skill through the years, she's become really good at saying stuff I know that doesn't naturally occur to her because it's a skill. She's learned it, and she's so encouraging. And I've learned to take the trash out on time and become pretty good at vacuuming. So
It's so interesting that you bring that up, Dean, because I have a theory. I have a theory that the love languages are actually love holes. It's the things we didn't get when we were growing up. And so the reason I think love languages can be helpful is because it gives you a bigger picture into what makes your spouse tick.
yeah.
Right. So, in my husband's world, he didn't get a lot of nurture or comfort. And so touch is a big deal, right? Because that feels nurturing or comfort. And so if I just, the thing I don't, what I want to be cautious about when we're talking about loving your spouse with their love languages is it can very easily go to pleasing. And if I'm pleasing my spouse, then I'm doing this with an agenda, either to protect myself from their displeasure or to manipulate them to get my needs met.
Yes.
And that is not loving, right? That is control, passive control. So, but I love the conversations that love language talking about those brings. So why, I'm curious, Dean, why are words of affirmation so important to you?
It's a great concept to explore that what was the hole in my life growing up. And that hole was a father who was in the Navy and gone all the time, and a mom who was a nurse that had to pay the bills who was gone all the time, and a grandmother who raised me who didn't have much to say. And so, I didn't know where I stood in the
Yeah.
world, where I stood with people, where I stood with me.
How do you feel about me?
Yeah, how does the world
Yeah.
feel about me?
Right.
And so I probed that as a young ADD kid, and got a lot of negative words back at me.
Mm.
So I began to become the things that people were telling me I was. And so yeah, that's a great concept that I have to share that with Gary. I think you'll have fun exploring
Yeah.
that love holes and love languages.
Yeah.
Nancy's the same way. Nancy, she had a dad that spent a lot of time working, a very loving, kind mother, but she watched her mom do acts of service to her dad. So I think maybe in her mind that was the pleasing aspect. Maybe she brought into our relationship. But the time love language for Nancy is big. We can sit next to each other on the sofa and watch um, crime movies ad nauseum. I'm totally bored after the second one. She's feeling me loving her by sitting next to her for
It's
2 or
your
3.
presence. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Your
So
nervous
that
system.
I like that love holes concept. Micah, you're getting all kinds of insider information as a single guy. Man, you're going to be way ahead of us. We were figuring all this out.
This is really good stuff. I'm thinking just in my relationship, but also in therapy that I do. So yeah. Wow.
I'm the older I get, the more that I understand that with every fear or insecurity we have is the opposite longing, like they're in tandem with each other. And so anytime you are aware of a longing, there is a corresponding fear. So knowing yourself, like for instance, say you struggle with pornography, what's the longing?
Yes.
To be seen, to feel adequate, to feel competent in some way. What's the longing? So if you can trace your longings, if you have an ability to find language for the longing, then you can also uncover the fear that is actually driving it. Because what drives our nervous systems is both, right? Our nervous systems are driven by our fears, and often first our fears and then our longings. So, and they're always competing for who's going to win. So it's good to know ourselves, and it's good to know others. Those are great conversations to have with a spouse, like that depth of understanding.
That's interesting to me. Okay. How is the fear connected to the longing? And I think there could be different ways it is, because you could get what you're longing for and fear it. Okay. Like if somebody hasn't been loved and nurtured much and grew up in a trauma culture,
Right.
where everybody they relied upon wasn't consistently there for them,
Right.
you scare them to death
By
when
getting close.
when you say I love you. It's almost too hot for
Right.
them to hold on to, because it contradicts their history. They want to believe in it, but it's frightening. They
Yeah.
Where if you treated them more harshly, or with at least no value, they would at least feel more comfortable in setting. They want that love, but that love brings up the contradiction. Is it real or is it not?
Right. And if I get close, will you hurt me?
Yeah.
That's so very true in homes that are chaotic and traumatic. That disorganized attachment, if I get close, you will hurt me. That's real. But I think in those situations, Roy, the fear is I won't be safe. It's the fear of unsafety, and the way our nervous systems work is it trumps love. I have to feel safe before I can feel loved.
Mhm.
And so if I never feel safe with you, even though I want to be close, I'm not going to let myself get close. And that's such a hard bind. So many people struggle with that.
I have another question on this, because this is just a very fascinating conversation. How does codependency fall into this, where it's like I can't function without the other person?
So codependency is a form of avoidance. It's the pleaser, right? It's I am going to basically define myself by you. When I'm talking about people who are codependent, when we talk about this, it's really idolatry if we think about it spiritually. But basically, because of life patterns growing up, I believe love looks like this, right? So we're together and neither one of us have freedom to move. We have to agree on everything. We have to feel the same things. We have to, or we won't be connected, right? It's the fear of disconnect. If I don't believe everything you believe, if I don't feel everything you feel, I feel disconnected, and that feels really scary, right? So healthy relationships look like this, right? I am my own unique self. I like chocolate. You like vanilla. I feel mad. You feel sad. And we're in relationship and we can dance here and relate to, but we maintain our sense of self. And this is healthy, right? So a lot of times you'll see codependent people attempting to draw people back because this is what feels normal. They often marry someone who's avoidant, like, so this other person likes to get this close, and the codependent person's like, no, you have to be close to me, right? And it causes all kinds of marital conflict. But for me, I would say that codependency is about needing the other person to be okay so that you can be okay, which means I'm going to manipulate you in some way to make you okay so that I can be okay. And again, that's not loving. I'm controlling you in a very sweet way, can look sweet, so that I get my needs met.
Man, at times I almost see codependency as an addiction in itself. I sat across the mom who shared with me at one point that she felt drawn to her son in such a way that she felt like an addict, like a drug addict. She felt so strongly connected to wanting to please her kid that it was like she was addicted to it. And I just find that this is very interesting.
Well, it's also interesting because um, down deep you need a shovel and a lot of digging. Okay. But down and it's not pleasant when you get down there. Okay, because the client ain't happy. All right. But down deep in the codependent is rage. Okay.
100%.
It is rage because, and I actually think um, it is, oh, I'm about to get in trouble. All right. God ordained rage in somewhat, meaning that God created us to be us. And when we choose to put anything before the us God created us to be, there is some internal conflict within me that God inspired, okay? That when I'm not being who God created me to be, there's a natural tension. And I believe the creator put it in there. I think we actually need it. All right. And so when I make, and I like the word idolatry, okay, when I make someone else that important over me, okay, I may deny it, but if you go deep enough, I am really, really ticked that I need that person to be okay. And it's a godly, not God, it's somehow God directed in some way. I may have a cast on my arm because I broke my leg. Okay, or well, let's get the right body part, my arm. Okay, the cast on my leg doesn't do any good if I have a broken arm.
That's correct.
All right. So I've got a cast on my arm. I need that cast, but I also look forward to the day when it's off. It itches. I don't want it. I want to have my arm restored without the cast. And I think that's okay from God, that it's okay that if I designed you a certain way, I want you to walk with me towards the way I designed you. And when you decide to do a detour and you're not really because you've left my will for your life in what you were becoming, if it doesn't 100% end up with self-satisfaction, maybe I as God caused it. I don't want you to be satisfied with a non-you. I want you to be satisfied with the you aligned with my will for your life. And so there's anger when we allow someone to control us at that level while we're denying it. Okay. Because, the drug addict, you know, panics when porn or the drug is not available. Okay. And that panic is not a pleasant response. And so, ultimately, it's not like they wanted the panic. In fact, the sex addict, when they get in high and become predatory in their trance, and they become agitated and they have to have that orgasm done at the end of this particular routine, okay, is enslaved at that moment. And on some level, they may deny it and they may say, I need this, or life sucks if I don't have it. but
They're not
there
free.
is some healthy part down there that says this is not a God-given healthy part that says this is not what I created you to be.
I wonder if the love skill then in that is just truthful honesty.
What do you mean?
Well, I'm hearing you say that in relation to God's love for us, the idea that um, this is not the way I designed you. This is not the way that I had hoped for you to live. I hope for you to live in the truth of what is here, to live an honest life, and you're living a lie. And so I wonder if maybe a skill in love is seeking to live a truthful, honest life, like seeking to have truth and honesty as a main feature in relationship. That's just something that popped into my mind.
Well, it's interesting to me. I was going to say this a little bit earlier, but working on the second marriage book of the two-book series, and and if my spouse can enter into my world in a way, Jan can enter into my world where the normal identity conflicts, and there's 9 conflicts I think we've come up with, uh, and my spouse, so I'm going to have this conflict from an identity perspective, no matter who I'm married to. All right. And it's a journey that God takes me on to motivate me to become all God created me to be. And if Jan can enter in and let me talk about that, the truth of that conflict, well, she has the same conflict, and we can share with one another, I can't buy that from anybody else in the world, where somebody who knows me, who's committed to my ultimate goodness, can enter into that level of deep struggle within me that they have going on within them, because these are all common conflicts that we have. And that is a value added connection in the marriage that can't be replaced any place else. Okay. Not that in other words, the relationship isn't my therapist, but my marriage is therapeutic. And it's therapeutic in a way that because we've set up the right levels of how we enhance each other and we speak the truth into each other's lives, eventually they make me a better me that I can't become simply on my own. That these are just basic identity conflicts. We all go through them. And if we learn to share about them, and the same would be true in church, if we can look at that identity conflict and as a church share about it, or as a men's group
Right.
share about it, or as a women's group share about it, it it is something that we can't get any other place, and that solidifies the human connection.
Yeah, that's what James 5:16 says, right?
Mhm.
Confess your faults to one another and you will be healed.
Yeah.
Healing happens, the therapy happens, the therapeutic happens in community when we share these things vulnerably with each other.
Yeah. Now, we're not done. We have a few more minutes. I wanted to check in to see if Paul had any comments. We have a Zoom user. And I found myself, you're welcome to say something. You're welcome not to say anything. I did find myself wondering if you were a male or a female or a couple. Okay. Because at some point I was going to say, Melissa's patient with us guys. What are the male attributes that make listening hard? But I didn't want to leave the Zoom person out, of it. So I thought, because, because we males have some interesting, male attributes that may make some of these scales particularly challenging. Paul, do you have anything to add that you heard so far today?
Sorry. Yeah, I've been writing ideas down. I connect. One thing I was caught earlier in the conversation was I've heard a phrase years ago called disinterestedness, and it's an old virtue that's maybe used in more Catholic theology and stuff like that. And I think it was the art of being present in a relationship without trying not to have an agenda. And I thought that's kind of helpful, because I know for me, I'm trying to think, what do I say next, But that thought, okay, what if I don't have an agenda, that I can actually be more present? And I think that's maybe tied up with trying to hear or trying to give the other person the space that, would be right for them anyway. And then another thought was relating to the relationship between fear and lust, actually. And I remember a situation I had years ago where I was struggling in a relationship with a friend. I struggled with same-sex attraction, and I was lusting towards my friend, and I was feeling terrible about it because I didn't want to do that. I was feeling distressed, and I went and talked to some people and got prayer. What do I do? I don't want to. I'm in turmoil, because I want to be friends with this person. And the friend was doing something that was sort of triggering it, but I was afraid to raise it, because I thought, if I raise it, I have to reveal that I struggle with same-sex attraction. They don't know about that. And I feared rejection. I thought they'll reject me as a friend. And this is another, brother in Christ from church, but it was a new friendship. And in the end, after a lot of prayer, some counsellor guy said, why don't you, graciously express your fear and why you're afraid to your friend? And I did it, and he accepted it graciously, didn't reject me. We went on to have a really good friendship for many years. But the lust, almost immediately, it just shriveled and died. Yeah, and so the lust was fueled by my fear of rejection. And so I think, Melissa, you alluded to it. When I felt accepted, just as a brother, as a friend, then the lust had no basis. It was the fear that was driving it. So again, that was another learning curve for me. It's good that if I feel some unwanted desires, perhaps, can I find what is the longing, the good longing, the God-given longing that I need to get in touch with?
Yeah. That's beautifully said. I love your insight there, Paul. Well done, Son of God. You are on your way.
Thank you, Tim.
And the other skills, people have written thousands of books on marriage skills, but I want to say, my desire is, what are the biblical skills? I got all kinds of Gottman skills, but neuroplasticity skills, but most couples can't handle that. They can't engage with that because it's just way above them. It's just basic skills. I think we've mentioned a lot of good basic skills tonight.
I'm just gonna throw in here that growing love skills involves growing in relationship with a resource greater than yourself, right? And so I don't know that it is possible to really love your spouse without being anchored in the love of God, because it is only His anchoring us that allows us to stand and be curious with our husband when we hear he's been unfaithful. I have to be anchored or tethered to Jesus in a way that I feel loved and safe in order to offer love to my guy. Or I have to be anchored in His love in order to look at my wife who is crying and I have no idea why, and it's scaring me to death. And stay present and not try to fix it and offer a solution, but just listen to things that don't make sense to me because it's not rational. I have to be anchored so that I don't have to show up in a way that protects me. And so when I think about love skills, I think for me, that has been the biggest one. Loving Jesus teaches me how to love my husband. and receiving his love enables me to love my husband.
Amen. Well said. We always tell couples, and Roy, in your book, you make it clear that we have to become the best us we can be so we can become the best spouse we can be. And um, there are things that only Jesus can give me. There are certain deep needed needs that only he can give me. And when I'm not walking in fellowship with God, it's almost like I'm inherently looking to my spouse to meet those needs. I may not even articulate that, but deep down in my soul, that need's not getting met. And I'm looking around, is there anybody that can meet it? And here's this person I'm spending all this time with, maybe they can meet it. And before we know it, we're demanding them to be Jesus to us and then getting mad at them when they fail.
And I can't, right.
So I do think a skill in a marriage skill is pursuing Jesus with all your heart, mind, soul, and spirit, and renewing your mind with his word and becoming that Christ follower that your spouse can feel safe with, knowing that you're not looking to them to give you what only God's going to give you. That's a big aha moment in our intensives. Couples, it's like their eyes go up and say, oh my gosh, I'm that person. And they look and they say, I'm sorry, I really expected you to meet all those needs and never forsake me and always be there and never be mad. And, they just kind of like say, that's awesome. Now I don't have to. And then the spouse says, yeah, now I can become me instead of worrying about how to be Jesus to you.
Okay, the bizarre ADHD moment of the time together. Are you ready? All right, so we're going to
Buckle
go.
up, Roy.
What's this?
I'm buckling up.
All right, buckle up. And by the way, I have the ability to say things that I have no idea where I'm going, and I have no idea, but I don't want to lose this concept because maybe someone will land the plane and I'll go, thank you very much for landing the plane. Okay. And it began, Melissa, with what you said, which was that we are dependent upon God or a resource outside of ourselves to have that sacrificial love for the other. Okay, because it's not natural, at least X% of the time, doesn't seem natural to us. All right. So then I thought, isn't it interesting that of all the things God says that we're supposed to do, he doesn't have a 1 Corinthians chapter 13 on gentleness. He doesn't have a 1 Corinthians 13 on joy. Okay. And I was going through the fruits of the spirit. So I'm up in ADHDville while I'm listening to you guys. Okay. All right. And then I went, love is where all those other things come together to be able to do it. Okay. That when Jesus says, love God, love, others. Okay. It is, like Roy, the way to live a good life is to go to the grocery store once a day. Okay. I can do that. All right. But I could do that and that not change me. Okay. Lots of parts of me could be disassociated and not involved when I went to the grocery store. Okay. And then if we got more abstract in some of the gentleness, even, okay, I can be gentle. All right. And yet is gentleness necessarily it's loving. Sometimes I'm loving when I'm gentle. And sometimes when Jesus looks at Judas and out of love says, hey, guy, you're about to do this. And only God would know that ahead of time to be able to tell you, okay, to do that. It's one more chance to get into Judas's defensiveness. And it was love. Okay. It was love. All right. And Peter, do you love me? It was love. And so when we look at all the things God wants us to do, and gentleness, the fruit is the fruit, and all the rest. I think the love that we've been talking about tonight, it requires more aspects of who we are. Okay. God wants to, for Melissa's right. For me to love, I need God in all of me. If I was going to the store and that was the key and it was more narrow and concrete, I would need God one way to go to the store. Try not to hit another car. All right. But in this way, to be able to love, because it's relational, I need God in I need him in my defensiveness. Times it's loving to be defensive. At times it's not loving to be defensive. In all the areas of personal development to love, I need God.
Mhm.
Amen.
And that's why the greatest of these is love.
With us getting closer to the end of our time, I'd love to hear briefly from all of you who are willing and able. 30 seconds of a takeaway, something that you heard tonight that's worth bringing into this next week. I'd love to hear from us as well as those of us who are listening. What are some takeaways?
I think maybe going back to those last statements that Melissa said, kind of knowing that I'm not on my own in my attempts to try to do the right thing, that there's someone greater than me, obviously God, who wants me to learn how to love, and that's cool, because I'm not, it's not my own resources totally, but obviously I'm going to be invited to participate in lots of opportunities.
Any final comments, other person out there, Dean or Melissa, before or Micah, before I read the final closing statement?
I'm going to keep learning about love holes and study that and look at the people around me and see where the holes are and how can I ask the Lord to help me fill them where appropriate.
Mhm.
I think for me, I'm going to definitely have to keep thinking about what you said, Roy, about deep in the codependent is rage. I haven't thought of that before, but that's a really interesting point.
We're going to develop that offline sometime because I have a need to understand that more. That's very profound.
Yeah.
Any parting words, Melissa, before we read
I'm actually just, my nervous system is so delighting in this conversation. I feel connected to each of you. I feel grateful, full of joy and love. And I think one of the things that happens in these moments is I'm listening to 4 godly men that I can see on the screen, or that I am aware that I am not alone in living out this light and this mission of loving others well. So it just brings me great joy. It's been a life-giving conversation in my soul.
Those of you that are the 4 of us, let's talk a little bit when this is done for a minute or two before we take off. But let's begin closing. We need to wrap up our podcast for today, Married Well. Okay. But the good news is Jesus, I'm having fun with him over here. That wasn't here, Married Well. I just stuck it in just to agitate him based on how he did it. Maybe that wasn't loving. I'm sorry. I'm surely not trying to please you, so therefore there is no rage. All right. Jesus continues to finish his good work within you. We got to have fun, don't we? I mean, we should have fun in life.
Yes.
All right. As God transforms you, you'll begin to see life's biggest challenges as holy moments. I think some of the things you guys stimulated in me tonight felt holy to me, and it was helpful. Acknowledging our sinful choices, emotional struggles, and relational difficulties isn't easy. Today's holy moment prompted us to reflect closely on our responsibilities, allowing us to collectively seek God's strength for change. And we also had a very good conversation about love. In fact, there are more love skills since there were 9, and I think we might have come up with 4 or 5. So we can maybe work on this conversation again sometime. Please feel free to invite others who you might know that benefit from this conversation. Now, may God bless you with the strength to practice Ephesians 4:2 and 3 daily. Here we go. Always be humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, but it doesn't stop there. Making allowance. It seems like it's an active statement for each other's faults because of your love. Make every effort to keep yourself united in the Spirit, binding yourselves together with peace. Now remember, God is quite the conversationalist. He is talking up a storm. There's 66 books. Okay. There are people he's speaking through to you every day. I mean, God is quite the conversationalist. So talk and listen to God today. Thank you so much. And we have an addiction podcast that we're having on Tuesdays once a month you'll get an email about because you're on our list. And then we have the all men aspect and this marriage one, and we're going to just add another one, I think in July, that will be for Christian ministries to call in and just talk about Christian ministry issues. So thank you very, very much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.